Hi, and welcome back to the inside of my head where I've been rewatching Singular Point, the cryptic new Godzilla anime. As I said in my last video, I'm going to be doing a few bite-sized vids to try and organize the story strands and maybe make it a little easier to get your head around. So my last video about Ashihara was probably my most successful to date. So firstly, welcome to everyone who's new to the channel. And secondly, I'm really glad to see that there is this much interest in Singular Point. Whether that's because a lot of people loved it or because there's a lot of people out there scratching their heads going, explain it to me, I don't know. But I'm the first to admit that I did not understand this show and I still don't understand everything. And this is my third time watching it. I was kind of hoping that the English dub would give me some answers. And yes, it definitely gave me a lot more info than the Japanese version I was working with before. But let's look at one of the cornerstones of the whole thing, the material known as Archetype. It's important first and foremost because of the fact that the kaiju can't exist outside of it for very long, as we see in episode 2 here, where this Rodan suddenly drops down dead because it's been out of its cloud too long. Later, a huge swarm of Rodan head for the city, bringing enough of the red dust with them so that they can live in it for much longer, perhaps indefinitely. Here as well, we see the Mandas spreading the red dust throughout the sea. So whatever this red stuff is, the kaiju need it, like we need oxygen. First discovered by Professor Michiyuki Ashihara in the bodies of certain jellyfish, the red dust is the first of 13 phases of Archetype. The orthogonal diagonalizer is a weapon that can trigger it to shift to another phase and bizarrely form these razor-sharp spikes. And this is another phase of Archetype. And they're also very handy for skewering any troublesome Salungas. Just not for very long. Fucking skewered me again. What the other forms of Archetype are, God only knows, but we do see Godzilla pulling the red dust towards him at one point and after igniting it, forming a cocoon for himself out of it. So I wonder if this is another one of the forms. In the last episode where Jet Jaguar sacrifices himself to beat Godzilla, the Archetype turns into these blue crystals that erupt out from everywhere. And this is the 13th phase of Archetype, but we'll come back to that later. Apparently, BB mentions at one point that Shiva has discovered 3 forms of the material. Do we ever see the third form that he was referring to? Not that I can think of, but you let me know. I also wonder if the monsters themselves are another form of Archetype and hence their ability to evolve. I'm not saying that the red dust turns into spikes, which then turns into a Kamunga, which then turns into a Rodan. I'm not saying that. This ain't no Pokemon!
It's Zapdos!
I'm just wondering if sentience itself is a form of Archetype. Anyway, as well as being able to take different shapes and have different properties, it's also a transtemporal substance that we can only see one facet of, which means that it can exist in multiple dimensions at the same time. But as well as that, it can also bend time and perhaps even exist at multiple points in time at once, which is a total headfuck to me. Like, do you remember that indie film Primer? I feel like I've just watched that. But Professor Lee shows this example, and Mei explains that the cube, which is made of Archetype, is causing the photons of light to travel backwards through time instead of forwards, which increases the energy in the cube and causes it to, well, see for yourself. And the fact that the molecule transcends time itself means that it allows creatures to evolve at a very fast pace. I think the best way to illustrate this is like, I saw this video the other day where there was a time-lapse shot of a pumpkin growing, and it just inflated up like a balloon, like in one smooth movement. Anyway, my point is, if these plants were sentient, living at that pace of life, we would seem like bees, just buzzing around like bzz, 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 because we live at a completely different pace. And that's the way these kaijus from another dimension seem to us, not in their movements necessarily, but in their evolutionary cycles. But anyway, back to Ashihara. After realizing that the Archetype was a key factor in the kaiju attacks, he founded a company called Shiva to mine and extract Archetype from a site in India. Now, it's not really explained why he was doing this, but perhaps he realized that the only way to stop the kaiju was to see the future, and to do that, he needed a super dimension calculator, and to do that, he needed Archetype. Another theory is that given the post-credit scenes where he sees that he's building a Mechagodzilla, the guy is evil, or has a vendetta against Godzilla in the very least, so he needs the Archetype for some nefarious plan. Possibly to give himself eternal life, or go back in time. You know these bad guys and their infernal machinations, who knows? Maybe he's tried snorting the shit and he knows it's going to be the next designer drug and it's going to be like the 80s all over again and he's going to be Scarface. Like, say hello to my little friend, and he stomps out in his fucking Mechagodzilla. But let's ask another question, maybe the most obvious question. Just where the hell is this stuff coming from? So, okay, it's coming out of this hole in the ground in India, and it's coming out of the ocean. Is it coming from the center of the Earth? I mean, I know it's coming from another dimension, but is it just a coincidence that it's always coming up from beneath us like that? Well, in this scene, they discuss how the kaiju are coming out of Archetype mineral veins from within the Earth's crust. And later it's mentioned that it's being produced by the singular points themselves, and further on, it turns out that Godzilla himself is a singular point, and therefore emitting the stuff. BB also mentions that Salunga can control the red dust, so could Salunga be another singular point? As we never see him emitting it, I'm guessing not, but I find it interesting that he has some sort of influence over it. But then on the other hand, Pelops 2, and I know that everyone keeps telling me that this thing's actually a dog, whereas I keep referring to it as a cat, but honestly the way they've drawn it looks more like fucking Pedo Bear than it does a Shiba Inu. But then, Pelops 2 does say that Ashihara must have been using the archetype to stop the growth of the singular point, so I am confused. Are you confused, Molly? Moo. Ah, she's cranky. She gets cranky when she's hungry. Did I mention she only eats human flesh? So how is Ashihara trying to use the archetypes against the singular point when it's coming from the singular point in the first place? Well, my best guess would be that it's a case of turning Godzilla's own weapon against him by shifting the archetype to its 13th phase, which is what ends up happening with the blue crystals at the end. Anyway, another thing that I find really interesting is that after a while in the red dust, weird red plant life starts to appear everywhere, as if their whole dimension is seeping into ours and gradually taking over. Then, on top of that, hundreds of these yellow moths appear. So it's as if this dust is bringing its own entire ecosystem with it, and I'm going to develop that idea further in my next video. Anyway, with GSP almost stepping into cosmic horror territory at times, I feel like there's no way that we can possibly know all the answers. But I love reading your comments and theories and all the stuff that you've noticed that I may have missed. Special mention goes to ACZE or ACZE, who wrote several paragraphs in the comments, and that really did give me a lot of food for thought, so thanks for putting that time in, buddy. I really appreciate it. Anyway, I know this probably hasn't been the most concise of videos. I've been absolutely swamped this week, but next week is looking better, so make sure you're subscribed, as there definitely will be more singular point stuff to come, as well as a Monsterverse video. And what's the other thing? What was the other thing? Oh, I finally got to see A Quiet Place 2, and I know the review's a little late, but you know, who gives a shit? And I'm going to do a quick video about the giveaway. And it's raffle time, baby! I hope you like bingo. Well, listen, I already did the raffle because this whole thing was going on for too long. And the reason I did that was because I realized I'm probably going to hit 1,000 subscribers before I've even done the giveaway celebrating 500 subscribers. You know what I mean? So I figured, let's just get it turned around. So anyway, guys, make sure you subscribe to check out all those videos, and I will see you very soon for the next one. Thank you very much for watching. Cheerio! Bye!